All right, everybody. Hey. Welcome to the For the Love podcast. We got a barn burner today.
Welcome back.
We really do. We have somebody on the show that I have wanted to interview for years.
I bet.
Years. And I
Yeah.
actually can't believe I haven't. I'm so excited to have her on today. I'm gonna bury the lead. But we have somebody who has made an enormous impact on American civic engagement.
Yes.
Is that a good way to say it?
Yes. She's changed things.
Yeah, she has. She's changed things. We're going to get to it. But also, hi, welcome back. You just got back last night from Colorado.
I did.
Yeah, from your spring break trip. Will you please tell the people about the picture that you sent me? You know what we're going to have to do is put it up.
Oh.
When we post come on. When we post this episode, I'll include this picture so you can see it with your eyes. But Amy, just go ahead.
I'll remove names because I did have to label people on the picture.
So they could see who was higher than another?
Right.
Oh, I understand that.
So three of my people climbed.
This is husband and two sons, by the way.
No, husband.
Oh.
Brother-in-law.
Oh, yeah. Husband,
son.
brother-in-law, and son. Yes, there it is.
They climbed Independence Monument, just in Colorado Monument, like outside of Grand Junction. Mm-hmm. Sort of looks like Zion.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Anyway, it was my kid's first multi-pitch.
And I think what that means is that, what is it again?
You climb something that is taller than your rope.
Climb something that is taller than your rope.
Is long.
Is long.
So you can only do this where there's good ledges where it makes sense. So one pitch is up to one ledge. So you climb with ropes and harnesses and everything up to a ledge, and then you pull all of your gear up, and then you start again with your belayer and your lead climber, and then you go up to the next pitch. And then you hang out on the ledge and you just...
Unsecured? For a minute?
You can,
For a minute?
There's, you can clip in, probably. Like, anyway.
My eyes are fluttering. I'm so scared of heights, and just the feeling of no, I don't even want to, I need to stop thinking about the feeling. But you sent me a picture from what looked like 10 miles away of the rock formation. I couldn't even see the human people, but with names and arrows pointing to where they were on this just freestanding rock column.
This was unique in that there is the park road climbs up high enough that you can look down on
which is where you were.
Mm-hmm. And so typically, like, we're at the bottom, but we were able to be like above them. And I watched the last pitch, and I had like a few moments, a few flashbacks. We did Angel's Landing when the kids were little, and I had a panic attack. It was actually really bad. But I did okay.
Okay.
So
That's awesome.
Yeah, stabilizing a little bit.
I love to hear it. Look, we do improve.
We do
get
improve.
older.
Yeah, and my kid conquered it. He
That's
did
awesome.
really well.
Oh,
So-
I bet he was the shit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody could probably tell him nothing. And you got home late last night, so thanks for like hustling it over to the podcast studio. You know, back at it.
Back at it.
And that kind of brings me to this question, because this is actually a question that our guest today posed in her new book, which we're going to discuss. But I like it for us. I'm curious what you're going to say. But if there were like no barriers, just whatever your objections or be, just take those down to the ground. Whether it's I don't have time for that, I don't have the money for it, I don't have the credentials, just pretend like none of that matters.
No barriers.
There's no barriers. So what is something totally new that you would jump into because you want to, because you're interested?
I would do the Camino by myself.
Oh.
And I would take as long as I needed to.
I think you should absolutely do this.
I mean, someday, but like there are actual barriers in our real lives. But that's been on my list for years.
Has it? Mm-hmm. How far is it?
There's different routes.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it can be as far as 500 miles.
Oh my gosh. you're going to do this.
Someday.
Yeah. You're for sure going to do
some
this.
days I like hobble along like to the bathroom.
True.
But someday.
But your own pace, your own rhythm.
I'm slow. I need more recovery time.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin's doing it this summer with his little kids.
Wow. Like how little?
Like 2 and 4.
They're going to stroller it?
No, like backpack.
Oh my God.
They're going to go at the kids' pace. They're going to take 3 months.
Are you serious right now?
It's
Your
the
cousin's doing that?
It's the best thing I've ever heard of.
That
So
is
that
amazing.
just even more like
Just in
tells
case
me
somebody doesn't know what the Camino is.
El Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage in Spain. Yeah. There's multiple routes. They're ancient routes. You can come up from the north in France or from the south from, I think, the Andalusian route. And they all converge on a cathedral. And it's not modern day. It's not so much about the ancient bones kept in the cathedral. It's about the actual journey.
Yeah.
So people of all walks of life, like all ages, all abilities, do this pilgrimage.
I love that. You know, BT and Brett.
I know.
I mean, this is not only like their own experience, but now they have a whole
Company.
guide. Yeah. Like a guide through it or however it all works. But
when I like little things like that, when he started that company, I was like,
yeah.
I have another resource.
And when the universe keeps giving you little pings, I love the pings. When you're like, all right, message received. I'll put it in the big stash that I'm collecting right now.
Yeah. So
would you like to do that in the next 5 years? Because I think that's reasonable.
I don't know.
Oh, it's out there now, sis.
Maybe.
I love this for you.
I mean, now I have a regular job that I can't do remotely. This thing. So, I don't know.
We are hardwired in.
We're hardwired in.
Yeah.
And when I say I'm going to go slow, I mean slow.
Okay, listen, that is true. But let me remind you of the sentence that I told you the very first week we ever were, doing podcast work. And you were anxious, understandably so. And I was like, listen. Actually, you heard me say it to a guest, but then I gave it to you as also your own personal mantra. There's no such thing as a podcast emergency.
There's no such thing as a podcast emergency.
There just isn't. So if you are on your pilgrimage, guess what? I'm going without a co-host for however long you need.
That's true. Do you think you can handle it?
I'm just saying, there's no such thing as a podcast emergency.
Right.
Like, we'll just sort it out.
Okay, so for you,
for me.
No barriers. Time, money,
Yeah.
confidence.
I have one, and I've never even said it. When I was kind of thinking through this question, getting ready for this interview, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what it is. But it's so insane. I think I maybe have said this to Tyler only. And I definitely have barriers. My barrier here is experience primarily. So I'm not qualified for this, is my point. I'm not qualified.
Yet.
But I'm telling you, it's like that thing where I just said, the little pings, the little messages keep coming up and I keep collecting them. And I just pay attention to what makes me feel something. You know, when you feel a little spark?
I do.
Like every time you see a thing and you're like, okay, something about that is asking for my attention. It's like that for me. But anyway, I would love to find out if I could, even in a cohort, like in a collaboration, learn how to be a songwriter. Not the music part, clearly. The lyrics. Like, write the songs. Like, write the lyrics. And I'm fascinated with the structure of songwriting. I am fascinated with the rhythms of it, the sort of rhyming cadence of it, the storytelling. You know, I love country music.
Yes.
So I like a story baked in. Anyway, I think about it a lot.
What?
I know. But I've never done it. I don't know anything about it. I mean, okay, I've actually done a lot of research on how do you write a song. But so I think maybe low hanging fruit, I would love to sit in the room in a songwriting session.
Oh.
Let me just watch it. Let me see how this works. Because I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I write words.
You do.
I'm ancillary, but that's solo work for me.
Yeah.
So, but songwriting is so often a collaborative thing, which to me is so interesting. I love that idea of ping-ponging around and finding somebody else's idea and building on it. I think I'd like to watch it in live,
Yeah.
in real time. And then I just don't know.
I mean, you have a lot of friends in Nashville.
No, I do.
And
Yeah.
now you've put this out there.
Yeah, you're right. I do.
So I think that you could probably figure out a way
Yeah.
to sit in on a songwriting session.
When you first want to learn to be a part of the palace court, you don't go straight to the queen. I need to be out in the streets with the amateurs for a while before I go to my queens at the top of their game. But it's interesting to me. So interesting.
Yeah.
And here's a way that I know it's something that I need to pay attention to. Because when I hear a new song that I love, and it is all working for me, like the arc of it and the callbacks and the bridges and all of it, my first thought right now is, I wish I wrote that.
Oh.
That's just not a normal thought to think
Not really.
about a song.
Yeah.
Like back in the olden days when I used to sing in my hairbrush, it would have been, I wish I could sing that.
Yes.
I'm aware of my limitations, but I do have a recurring thought. I wish I'd written that song. So anyway.
Huh. Those are two good ones.
They're good ones, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I like those because there are steps toward both of those things becoming real.
Mm-hmm.
Low steps, most people don't just go right for the brass ring. They kind of ease their way into it. Anyway,
Well,
now
I
I've
sure
said it.
don't.
Now I've said it.
Okay.
By the way, we'd love to hear yours. Like, remember the metric here. There's no barriers. So if you didn't have to say, well, I don't know how, or I don't have the money for it, I don't have the time for it, just push all that aside. So if you had something that you would love to go for, something the universe keeps pinging you on, we'd like to hear it. We'd like to maybe even play your message on the show. If you go to jenhatmaker.com, under the podcast tab, you'll see right there's a button. It says send voicemail. It's just that simple. Just like punch it and leave us a minute or two message. Like, tell us this would be my thing. If I could do anything and I had no reason not to, this would be the thing that I tried. And we may play that on the podcast. So let us know. We'd love to hear it.
Even if we don't play it, saying it out loud has power.
Facts.
Just saying it into a voicemail.
Facts.
Might
You are
move
right.
the needle.
And I'll tell you that we'll listen to every one of them. So
That's true.
We will have heard your dream for sure. Yeah, you're right. There's something about saying it out loud, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because somebody will remember that shit and be like, hey, how's that going for you?
Accountability is not supposed to be part of this.
Thank you. Like, we'd like this on our own terms. Right. Sure. But that question, that whole idea of like this kind of spark that could catch and turn into a flame, brings us to today's guest. So we are continuing our pretty incredible midlife renaissance series. We've had such good conversations with the best guests. We've talked about our changing friendships and circles of belonging at this stage of life. We've talked about our evolving faith systems the older that we get and we start examining those in new ways. We have talked about finding inspiration and going after long-held dreams, right? Finally being like, it's now or never, right? Like, this is time. We don't get any of it back. And so if you haven't already, go back and listen to those episodes that we've had so far with Dr. Tima, Aaron Hicks Moon, Lisa Congdon. If you haven't already listened, by the way, those episodes are just getting tons of traction. Not surprisingly, like, our community is like, yes, yes, yes. This is our age. This is our season of life. This is our space. These are our questions. And so this whole series has been like really, really great to host. So today we are talking about something that can catch some new life right here in the middle, which is, what am I passionate about? And is it linked in any way to like my purpose here? You know, we're kind of right here, entering the second half of life and wondering, wow, is it time? Is it time for me to like go for this thing and to like seize this dream and to make things happen toward this idea that I keep spinning with? There's no way that you haven't heard about our guest today. We have the formidable Shannon Watts on the show today. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I've wanted to have her on the show for years. I admire her. I respect her so much. Just in case that's not ringing a bell. Shannon Watts, she's a social activist. She's an author. And the way that you may know her is she is the founder of Moms Demand Action, which is the largest grassroots movement fighting gun violence in the U.S. ever. She was a former communications executive, and then after Sandy Hook, her own flame caught, like so many other people, and she took all that outrage and shock and grief and turned it into action. And Shannon mobilized millions and millions of women to advocate for gun safety laws. She's been recognized in Time 100 Most Influential People, Glamour, Woman of the Year, no big deal, man. Forbes 50 over 50, Worth Magazine's Worth 100. This goes on and on and on and on. Like her list of credentials at this point is like as long as our arms. So after she stepped back from her leadership role at Moms Demand Action in 2023, Shannon took her focus toward women and specifically empowering women to take charge of their lives and leading advocacy efforts for women in politics and then really across all levels of social change. She recently co-founded Women Wednesdays for Harris, which was a voter mobilization initiative. And she launched Firestarter School, which is an online community to help women essentially reclaim their power, which is what we're going to talk to her about today. Her latest book is called Fired Up: How to Turn Your Spark into a Flame and Come Alive at Any Age, which we love to hear it. This is why this is located squarely in the Midlife Renaissance series. This is basically a roadmap for women who are finally ready to just go, that's it. I'm going to like embrace what I love, what I want. I'm going to overcome whatever self-doubt has been holding me back from that thing. And I'm going to move forward in passion and in purpose at any age for any reason. And so obviously this is why we wanted to have Shannon on today, among a million other reasons. This is a powerful woman. This is someone with grit and with gumption and with really incredible instincts and tenacity. I mean, really, what a life she has lived thus far. And so we can't wait to talk to her about her new book and her vision for women. And we are lucky to have her. So without any further ado, let's welcome Shannon Watts to the show. Well, you guys, we've got a powerhouse on today. Shannon Watts, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here.
Gosh, same. We were just saying, I feel like I know you, and we know all the same people, and
Yep.
our story arcs are similar. We care about the same things. I'm like, how are we just now meeting in 2025? I don't know what took us so long.
Well, finally, we're best friends.
Jeez, gosh, finally. We're so glad that you're here. Let's start here because you have a new book that comes out in June. I'm really excited for you. And we're going to talk a lot about that book today and its central messaging and what it means for women, what it's meant for you. But let's pull back a hair and start here because this had to have certainly fed the content. You know, obviously you built one of the largest grassroots movements in America ever. And so I'd love to hear what that story, what that journey taught you about people, women people particularly, these little seeds right, in the field that are now like flourishing into this new kind of branch of your work and of your career, and particularly this book?
You know, I had a career in corporate communications before I started Moms Demand Action. I had taken a 5-year break and was blending my family with my new husband. We have 5 kids all together. And I thought, okay, I'll take 5 years off. And at the very end of that 5 years was the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy. And I posted on Facebook, you know, it's time for women to stand up to gun lobbyists the way Mothers Against Drunk Driving did in
Yeah.
the 80s when I was a teen, right?
Yep.
And just to restore the responsibilities that should go along with gun rights. Just thinking this was going to be an online conversation.
Sure.
But if you know anything about women, you know that very quickly it turned into the largest offline grassroots movement in the country,
That's
right?
right.
Because women are so passionate about protecting their families and their communities.
That's right.
And no one could believe that 20 children and 6 educators had
Right.
been slaughtered in the sanctity of an American elementary school. So I kind of went into this knowing that women were the secret sauce to activism, right? I'd seen it through MAD. You know, you can go all the way back to Prohibition if you study activism. The
Sure.
more you realize the stories that it's women and often mostly women of color who are on the front line forcing change. And that ended up being the same successful recipe for gun safety too. Over a decade, you know, I worked with volunteers and survivors shoulder to shoulder. We
Yep.
passed over 500 gun safety laws.
Crazy.
But this journey taught me something that I did not expect. And that was that the activism that we were doing on the ground through Moms Demand Action wouldn't just transform the issue we were working on, that it would transform all of us,
For sure.
all of the women who were working on it. You know, women who would come into the organization because of a shooting tragedy or because their kid went through a lockdown drill suddenly realized that when they were working on something they were passionate about with other people who supported and encouraged them, they had this unique set of values, skills that unlocked these dormant desires that they had.
Totally.
And so when you get involved in something like activism, it helps you realize you have all this untapped power. And it does give you the audacity to become what I call a fire starter. And that is simply a woman who makes the choice to prioritize her desires over her obligations.
Man.
Okay. Okay.
Your book, it's called Fired Up, How to Turn Your Spark into a Flame and Come Alive at Any Age. And it opens with a really powerful moment in your own life where you realize that the life you've built is making you incredibly sick,
Yeah.
physically ill, emergency room. Can you take us back to that moment and how it led you to where you are now?
Yeah, you know, just for context, my parents divorced when I was graduating from college. And it was a particularly brutal divorce. And I'm an only child. And this whole experience really sent me into a spiral because everything that I sort of clung to was imploding. And I think because my family was falling apart that I subconsciously decided, oh, I will start a new one. So,
Sure. As one
you know,
does.
as one
Yes.
does when their brain is not fully developed.
That's
And
right.
so
That's right.
right out of college, you know, I marry my college sweetheart. I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
By the time I'm 29, I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I have a job I don't love, but I'm the person who pays the bills. And then I get to be in my mid 30s and I kind of realize, oh, this isn't the person I would have picked, you know, had I waited until a normal age to get married. And so my marriage was faltering too. And I was really having a difficult time acknowledging that I was living this life that was not true to me.
Yeah.
I loved my kids desperately, but I was in an unfulfilling job. I had an unhappy marriage. I had an unbelievable and overwhelming amount of pressure. But I just kept doing what was expected of me, these
Sure.
shoulds that society puts on us, all of these obligations. And so ultimately what I pushed down internally came out externally.
Yeah.
I became engulfed in eczema. And I know that some people might think, oh, you had some itchy bumps. No, from head to toe, my scalp down to my feet was covered in these horrible oozing
Yeah.
lesions that prevented me from sleeping and focusing and, you know, just kind of
just
operating.
misery. Yeah.
Misery. And nothing I was prescribed calmed it down. Nothing. In fact, anytime I felt stress in my body, I
flare.
felt the eczema flare up. And so I go to this appointment. This guy gets me in during my lunch break. I have like 30 minutes.
Sure. Oh my gosh.
I think he's just going to look at it. He's a specialist. He's going to help me. And it ended up being this epiphany, this moment where he shows me all this sympathy, and I just break down
Yeah.
and start to sob
I get
and
this.
finally face all of the things in my life that aren't working and that I have made some really wrong choices that I am going to have to undo
Yeah.
if I want to get well. And it really wasn't that eczema was a sickness. It was a symptom of a life that was making me sick. And I think this can be applied more broadly, which is to say, no matter how you ignore what you want or what you need, that is like an energy that will find its way out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Through anger or anxiety or depression, apathy, resentment. And mine basically burned me from the inside out.
Yeah.
But that experience and this realization in that doctor's office that I wanted and deserved more for my life was really a turning point that helped me figure out, we're going to talk about this, I know, but this formula for living on fire, right? A formula that encouraged me to ultimately end my marriage, to reimagine my life, and eventually to start Moms Demand Action.
I want to drill into that for a second because this is one of the central messages of your book. This powerful idea that in general women have been conditioned to make themselves smaller, more palatable, which means in order to do that, we are going to have to prioritize obligation over desire, right? Over whatever it is, whatever hunger we have, what we want, what we know, what we need. And so you call embracing what we want a radical act. And I would agree. It shouldn't be. It's not radical when men do it. But it is when women embrace their own hunger over obligation. It's a radical act. So yes times a million to this. Can you parse that out a little bit more?
Yes. We get so used to catering to the wants and needs of other people that we don't prioritize our own wants and needs, to the point where it can start to feel really uncomfortable and foreign even to believe that we deserve more. And I also have seen with myself and with, Moms Demand Action really became like the world's largest field experiment for helping other women figure out what makes them come alive. And so we can start to mistake those obligations for our desires. We think we want to be busy. We think we need to be perfectionists. And so we start to live by the rules of this system that is actually designed to keep our desires in check. And that is what leads to anxiety, isolation, exhaustion, all the things that put me in the emergency room, really the opposite of living on fire. And just to be clear, living on fire is a metaphor that I use for this journey of personal transformation. Not the kind of transformation that's going to make you, younger or famous or wealthy.
Sure.
But basically an internal shift. And what it really helps you see two things more clearly are what's limiting you and what's calling you. And those things are going to differ from one woman to another woman. It could mean being open to new experiences and relationships. It could mean bringing new energy or intensity to what you're already doing. It could be pausing and slowing down and maybe doing less than you were before, right? It doesn't mean like do more things, be more busy. It means do the things that are meaningful to you, even if they're ordinary things. And I think given where we're at in the world right now, there's really an immoral imperative to figure out what makes women feel alive, right? That you were living the life you want, that you're leaving a legacy. And I know that's a really big word sometimes, legacy. People think it's like your name on a hospital building or, something that is going to be in the New York Times obituary, but it's not. It's really just about giving your life meaning, giving other people the permission to do the same thing. Living authentically is a little bit of a hackneyed phrase, but it's this idea that you've made the most of your life. And when scientists ask people, what is your deathbed regret? They say that they did not live a life that's true to them. And every woman deserves that.
In your book, you introduce this incredible concept about a fire formula.
Yeah.
Every actual fire in nature needs 3 things to occur and to keep burning. And you frame it as combining our desires, our values, and our abilities to sort of create this real transformation in ourselves. Can you break down what those 3 components are in our lives?
Yes. And just as you said, it really is using the fire triangle, this simple scientific method in real life that explains how fires work. And each side of that triangle represents an element that is required to bring a fire to life: heat, oxygen, and fuel. So if you look at your desires, right, that is one of the most powerful element of this triangle. It's the heat that activates your fire. It's your deepest longings, the part of you that really want to be seen, to make an impact, to be shared with the world. And these are longings that you want to act on. And then the next part is the oxygen in your fire triangle. And that's really your values, your personal beliefs, your principles, how you define your priorities, your decisions. And it determines what's really important in your life.
Right.
And then the third is your abilities. And that is unique to everyone, right? That's your mental or physical gifts, your talents and your skills. Some of them are innate, some of them are acquired, but ultimately they set you apart from other people. And this is the element that fuels your desires. And using this formula, it is really a way that I have seen women come alive. They start to live not just from the inside out, but from the outside in. And if you combine those 3 things in just the right way, it will ignite a fire in your life, big or small. If you remove any of those elements, right, just like in the real life, the fire will not start or it will go out. And so it's really a sweet spot where what you long for is aligned with what grounds and guides you. And, I just want to say, I'm not a unicorn. I didn't start Moms Demand Action because I'm some extraordinary person. I started it because that formula came together for me. And really, it's like magic, right? It feels like touching the divine.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. When the wind is just at your back.
Yep.
And you just kind of hit the zone and the groove and you're like, this is it. This is my lane. This is my thing. I like how you've mentioned a couple of times that a fire in any given life, it does not necessarily mean something massive. It could mean you're going to quit your job and start a whole new career. It could be that. It could be you're going back to college. It could be you're starting a whole new relationship. It may be like a full sea change, but it could also mean small. It could mean reclaiming really like precious parts of ourselves that we've lost. And maybe like one chamber of our little hearts or whatever. And so one way that you've structured the book is you include all these incredible examples. And so I wonder if you might share an example of a fire starter from your book who did something small.
Yes. I had the privilege of speaking to over 70 women from all walks of life for this book, which was just exciting on top of all the other experiences I've had in my career and in my activism. And what I'm so impressed by is, when women figure this out, what makes them come alive, they really start to do other things, right? They start to speak up in the workplace, or they start to claim the space they deserve. And so, there's one story in there about a woman named Carol Frick, and she's a retired teacher. And she had always wanted to be a writer, but to pay the bills, had to be a phys ed teacher, which she loved. But once she retired, she decided she was going to volunteer at an animal shelter. And she came up with this idea one day that she was going to write a novel about a love story in an animal shelter. She teaches herself how to write dialogue. She spends hours and hours of research and practicing and telling a compelling story. She transforms herself from a novice, right, who doesn't know how to create a plot, into an expert. And she writes this book, and she decides that it is so important to her, she does not want to self-publish. She wants and deserves to be published
Yeah.
by a publishing firm. And she was rejected more than 200 times.
Wow.
Finally, on the 219th try, she gets a book deal, and she becomes a published author in her 70s.
It's
right?
amazing. Love. I have goosebumps.
There's
Yeah.
another woman who has severe ADHD and doesn't know, what she wants to be and is sort of struggling with her own identity. She's 40 years old, and she decides to volunteer with immigrant families at the Mexico border. And that encourages her to start this organization that has been around for almost 5 years now, that is helping to support mostly mothers by bringing them money and supplies. And the last example I'll give, just because there's so many I can give, but these women are impressive. Amber Goodwin had applied to 16 law schools after she graduated from college. She was rejected by all of them. After the 2016 election, she decides she's going to try one more time at age 38. She gets accepted. She's going to law school, working full time. At 40, she's elected the first Black president of her student bar association.
Amazing.
And now she's a prosecutor in Texas, working to get more people of color represented in law school. Like all of this didn't happen overnight.
That's
It was this ongoing process.
Wow.
And I love the through line there of a bit of tenacity.
So much
that the
tenacity.
first rejection doesn't like eject you out of the idea, or that there is something about being dog on a bone. Like the triangle's in place. I know it. Like, I know it. This is my deal. These are my values. This is my thing. I'm going to stay the course until I get there. I love that piece of it because we kind of live in a overnight success world right now. It's such a weird world, watching people just spike up and all of a sudden they're everywhere. I'm like, oh, that's not really.
Not how it works.
That's not how it works, and it's not how it lasts either.
Right. And I love that if you use this formula of the heat and the oxygen and the fuel, so many of these women just keep collecting their fuel, like keep collecting the kindling, like acquiring new skills, like for years, waiting for the other two things to come
That's true.
together. And then we're prepared when
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When an opportunity presents
That's so
itself.
true. Good point.
Or when we have the bandwidth to create our own opportunities.
It's a practice.
Yeah, for sure. One of the chapters in your book is called Why Women Don't Live on Fire and Why You Must Anyway. So why don't we?
Yeah.
What holds us back?
Well, the good news is there's this formula for living on fire, but the bad news is that following it is not easy.
That's right.
We live in a society that puts up all of these obstacles that
That's right.
attempt to block us at every turn. And that's because society knows what would happen if women were encouraged to want and to fulfill their desires, right? The world would come undone. Without our mental and physical energy propping up the system, governments would fall, institutions would crumble, traditional family systems would fall apart. And so to make sure that doesn't happen, society really shoulders with women so many burdens and so many responsibilities. And that includes everything, as we know, from housework to caregiving. And so you don't really have room in your life to explore your desires. So you are going to get blowback.
Yeah.
And, I call these extinguishers. They are this negative inner voice that society has told us all the reasons why we shouldn't do this. And what it boils down to are feelings of guilt and shame, right? Guilt tells you did a bad thing. Shame is more insidious. It tells you you're failing as a person.
That's right.
And that can be manifested as everything from imposter syndrome to perfectionism to self-sabotage, right? Like I've seen all of it because it can make us uncomfortable. It can make other people uncomfortable. And so if you're going to claim space, raise your voice, you are going to get this blowback. And what this book talks women through is what to do when that happens, right? How you respond to this backlash, the fact that it's proof that you're doing something right, because ultimately the direct proportion to which you can grow your fire depends on the amount of blowback you're willing to withstand.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is so true. That thick skin will see you through for sure. And you do have to be prepared for that. It's not even a matter of if, it is when. It will
Yep.
come. There will be resistance. Nobody wants you to disrupt the life you have made possible with your complicity, right? Like with my
Exactly.
invisible labor, my unpaid labor, my all the ways that I'm doing. Nobody wants us to pull the pin out of that grenade. They like it the way it is. So yeah, be prepared for someone to say you're being selfish to
Yes.
want what you want, to do what you
Yes.
want, for sure. And your book gives a lot of answers to that disruption. I'd like to hear you very specifically talk about the listener right now who's hearing this and going, yes, like I'm catching feelings here for this conversation, but I am too old. I'm too old. My building years are in the rearview mirror. Like the time when I had all the energy for this was in my 30s and 40s or whatever. I've missed my window. I have big
hear
thoughts here,
this
and I'd like to hear
so
yours.
much. Yes, I would like to hear your big thoughts, but I hear this so much, and I just gave some examples to you of the
Yeah.
women that I talk to in the book, and I make sure that I talk to a lot of women who are over 50, because for many of us, because I had kids so young, I became an empty nester at 49,
Yeah.
and I still have so much runway in my life. I didn't start Moms Demand Action until I was 41. I didn't figure out what it was that made me tick. And as I said, I'm not a unicorn. I am an introvert. I struggle with severe ADHD. I have a debilitating fear of public speaking. I knew little to nothing about politics, organizing, or gun violence, right? This is not the description of someone
It's
people would point to
not.
and say, oh, she should take on the
She's
most
the one.
powerful, wealthy special
Yeah,
interest
yeah.
that's ever existed. No,
Yeah,
no one
she's
was
the
saying
one.
that.
Yeah.
And in fact, lots of people told me I wasn't the one
Yeah.
and that I shouldn't do this. And yet, despite all of my imperfections and my lack of preparedness, I stepped up. And even though there were a lot of obstacles that seemed insurmountable, right? Some I had constructed inside myself over a lifetime, some
Sure.
built by society. I still overcame my fear of public speaking. I stepped into the spotlight. I summoned the courage to put
Yeah, you
myself
did.
out in the world. And it turns out, right, that this neurodiverse, reserved, middle-aged mom in the Midwest was exactly the right person
That's
for the
exactly
job.
right. That's exactly right.
And lots of women in the book don't have that epiphany until they're in their 50s, 60s,
Totally.
70s, and beyond. And even young women struggle with this. I teach a lot of college classes, and many of the women stay behind afterward. They're like 20 years old, and they say to me, I'm about to graduate, and I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
And so I really wrote this book for women of all ages, right? Young women and women in midlife who don't feel like they're thriving, women who might look like they're thriving on the outside but feel off
Totally.
internally, women who want to make an impact on the world and don't know how. Getting back to this idea that we all deserve to leave a legacy.
You have this really interesting concept of a controlled burn in your own life. The idea of pruning away things that no longer serve us, taking time in between the fires in your life to sort of leave space. Can you talk about that concept and how we can start doing that in our own lives?
Yeah, I think this is a really important part of this discussion because just like in real life, right, controlled burns are part of the fire cycle. They balance and restore the ecosystem. They make it less susceptible to wildfires. But they don't just prevent fires that are out of control. They really rejuvenate the forest floor. They return nutrients to the soil. They get rid of debris. They create space for sunlight. And that can happen in our lives too, right? It is removing anything, any person, any system that is an obstruction. And it's a way to kind of audit all the demands on your time, right? And to decide what to do less of, what to do more of, maybe what you need to get rid of altogether. I think a lot of what this comes down to are boundaries, right? This person's thing or system is not honoring the energy I am spending on negotiating and dealing with them. I could be spending that energy and time nurturing my fire. And so my book takes people through exercises that help them figure out what that controlled burn should be. I interview a woman in the book. She goes by the stage name of Milk, if you've heard of her. She's a singer and a musician. And when the Women's March happened, she had a song go viral, and suddenly she had a record deal, and she had all the things she wanted in her life. And yet she wasn't happy. She wanted to go back to being an independent artist. And so she did this controlled burn where she got rid of her record label and she decided to take control back over her musical direction. And she also had been struggling with an eating disorder. This disorder that told her she had to stay small. And so
Sure.
part of her controlled burn was an experiment where she decided to get rid of all the clothes that were restricting her. And she threw them all away and bought clothes that fit her. That was part of her controlled burn.
That's
And
good.
look,
Wow.
it could be minor, like getting off social media, limiting the amount of news you consume, something I'm sure we all want to do.
Yeah.
Weeding out things that suck your time, like unnecessary meetings, social gatherings. But it could also be major. Maybe it is cutting a relationship out of your life, giving up a vice or habit, leaving a job. Whatever it is, it really gives you more energy to dedicate to your building your fire.
Did you come across any of those while you were writing this book where you thought, yes, I'm gonna write the chapter on getting rid of the stuff in your life, and all of a sudden you were like, uh-oh, I got some stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely did. I mean, being on social media while I was leading Moms to Man Action was really a full-time job.
Totally.
And I was spending way too much time on Twitter. And being able to kind of look at that was very healthy for me to cut back on that. And, when I stepped back from Moms to Man Action in 2023, I thought, who am I and what am I without Moms to Man Action? And yet I wrote a book.
Yes.
And I started writing more, and I joined a genealogy class that I was passionate about. So that controlled burn of social media gave me more time to do the other things I wanted to do.
Totally. I know this is off topic. It's over here, but well, we live in a world. We live in a world and in a time, and we're fighting for our lives over here. You are too, we all are. And we're trying to figure out how to live with conviction and integrity right now, specifically when it just seems like truth itself is up for grabs. Morality certainly is. Democracy, apparently, like just a lot of things that felt that we can maybe count on in our adult lives aren't holding the water that we expected them to. And so, we're freaking out. And so, but we're also overwhelmed. We've talked a lot for these last couple of months, here on the show about, in terms of a controlled burn, I have absolutely had to limit my media intake. I just had to because I just couldn't get through the day. I was just in such a spiral of despair and outrage. And to be clear, we have to keep our foot on the gas. Of course we do. That's always going to be our work. But I had to figure out how to manage it all. Anyway, what is my question here? My question here is, how are you managing the world right now? How are you managing? You're obviously so politically savvy, and you've done so much of your most amazing work through the system, like with the system. You are a policy maker. You are a change agent at the legislative level. So can you help us? Can you help us? What are we doing? What do we do?
I will tell you when we poll our volunteers what they tell us about why they stay involved. And they say two things. One is they feel like they're winning. So I think it's really important to remind yourself
they feel like they're winning.
Positive things. Yes, they feel like they're winning. And I'm talking about gun safety specifically, but I think this applies to life.
Oh, I love that
like
sentence
winning.
Alone was awesome.
Yes.
Like, I just love that.
Remind yourself of all the wins every day. Maybe they're your wins. Maybe they're wins for, what you want to see in the world. But it's really important to give yourself hope and affirmation. The second reason that they stay is because they find their people. When you find your people, not only does it bring out the best in you and help you realize who you are and what you want out of life, but you don't want to disappoint those people. So you keep showing up. What I have seen in activism, and in particular gun safety activism, is that it is very easy to become cynical or hopeless or to feel helpless. to feel like it is easier to sit on the sidelines than it is to get involved. And I have always felt like that is just ultimately an excuse for inaction. We have an obligation in a democracy to step up. You know, Alice Walker says, activism is the rent I pay to live on the planet. And I kind of think of it like a sick child, right? For those of us who are moms, you're up with a sick kid in the middle of the night. They have a fever, they're throwing up. You're exhausted. You don't say, sorry, I'm really worn out. I got to go to bed. I hope this works out for you.
Yeah.
You hold their hand until they're better. And I think the same is true with democracy, that we don't have to do all the work, but we have to, again, using our if we look at the fire triangle, right, our abilities, our values, and our desires to guide us toward the work that is right for us, and to do it passionately, and to do it well, and to do it in community. Because those are the people that are going to keep lifting you up and helping you to keep going.
That is true.
That is
Yeah.
true. I love the example of a choir can hold a note for a really, really long time because individuals can take a breath and then resume their note. And we just have to do it together.
Yeah. That's the only way. And that is its own fuel. You're right. It is. It's a self-fueling endeavor just to be with friends and like-minded people kind of rowing in the same direction.
And it's also a form of self-care. We talk a lot about self-care right now, which I think is important. But don't forget that fighting for your safety and your rights is a form of self-care and a form of protection for other people.
Certainly.
I do, when I start to spiral, I pull out my little app and I make a phone call. Even one phone call to a congressman's office. And if I can be as kind as possible to whoever answers the phone and get through my script, I feel better.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
Because it's something. Everything is something.
One email, one call, one tweet. You know, I always say it is incrementalism that leads to revolution. So don't think anything you're doing is too small.
That's good.
Man. So wrapping up, where can our listeners find you? Where can they find Fired Up? What are you working on currently that they can participate in?
Well, I'm so grateful you had me on. I'm just, I am so excited about summoning other women's audacity. It's my favorite thing. And I hope that this book unlocks in women the reality and the realization that they can do whatever they want to do and that they deserve it, right? And so you can go to firedupbook.com to find more out about my book. I'm on all social media platforms at Shannon R. Watts. I have a Substack called Playing with Fire. And then I'm going to be launching Firestarter University in the fall, and it's a year-long online program based on the book.
I love this. I love it. Look at you go. All this like new work, this kind of next iteration of what you're going to put your hand to is so exciting. I love it.
Fire.
Yeah, I love this. I love watching it like right here at the genesis of all of this coming out into the world. This is exciting. I'm thrilled for you. Thank you for all the labor it took to write the book. I know what that feels like. That is a heavy lift, ma'am. Getting to that finish line is no joke. So good on you for clearing some space. You couldn't have done it while you were still at the helm. And so following your own instincts on that was also audacious to do so, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who are like, no, Shannon, you need to lead us for the next 3 decades. Because you've done it so superbly and it's so important, and it's always important. But even now, as we're kind of grappling for rollbacks. And so for you.
Power should be finite. That's important.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, I think that impulse was right, and here we are about to stand on the precipice of all this next work of yours, and so it's exciting. Thanks for being on the show. I'm just delighted to have met you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
it's so wonderful to meet you both.
Same. And you, listeners, we'll round up all this for you, like every link, everything. So don't worry about it. You're not going to have to remember it all. We got you.
Yeah.
All right.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah, right.
It's incredible.
It's mattered. It's mattering. So what else can we do except matter? I just love it. All right. You're the best, Shannon. Great to have you on today. All right. Well, she's a powerhouse.
her work through that organization, and then the ability to step aside and let someone else lead, like it's huge. And when we thanked her for her work, it legitimately, she's made my kids
That's right.
in classrooms safer.
Over 500 pieces of legislation
Yeah.
they have helped pass. That is so, like, that's history book stuff. Like, this will be written in time.
And we do want to put her on a pedestal. Like, that's our inclination. But she says over and over, I'm not a unicorn.
Yeah,
It just, the things came together, and I was fueled by
totally.
the same rage all the other moms were. And it just, then she kept going.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and then the sum becomes greater than its parts.
yeah.
Like, that's just kind of what happens to her earlier point about grab hands with the people who are with you. Because all together, you're way more powerful than what any one person can do or is. And that's certainly Moms Demand Action. I mean, all 50 states, that's been a real wonder to watch, like in our adult life.
It has. And all the conversations about the unpaid labor women do, all of the mental loads, it is hard. It is a struggle. There needs to be a balance, but also the skills we acquire when we stay home, when we juggle parenting and work, like these are CEO skills.
They truly are.
We are so prepared
I know, you're right.
when we do finally get some breathing room
You're right.
to do the work she's doing.
Yeah, that feels exciting. And, tons of us are right here in midlife where, believe it or not, younger listeners, you do get some breathing room. Like, just when you think, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die here in this pile of children and their soccer games and their homework and their sleepovers and the birthday parties and the just another minute longer. And they start launching, and all of a sudden you go, I've got some room to think.
Yeah.
And turns out we're sitting on a pile of soft and hard skills. And they can be put to use in such amazing ways. And some of it's in like big activism based ways like Shannon. And others are just like in smaller ways in our lives.
Yeah.
And just the lives that we lead in our little towns and our little homes and wherever we are. And so I really like this conversation. And I like having it right now because I just see our age group doing this right now, going, I think there's something new for me, or I want there to be something new for me, or I have more energy to put somewhere, and it's just fun. I love change. I think change is fun though.
You do.
I do. I get really excited when someone's like, I'm going to do a big ass thing. I'm like, oh my God, let's get a business plan. Like, what's your first 10 steps? Which feels so exciting to me because I don't know. I've just seen so many times that almost always on the other side of that yes is just something awesome. One way or another. It's just like, that's the first step of a road that turns into something beautiful or exciting or interesting or valuable or all of those things.
It can be so daunting though. But her book does a great job after giving examples of women who have done things, started their own fire. There's like little almost workbook sections where it says like, just sit down and write these 3 things down.
Yes, exactly.
Like it gives you steps.
Right, because it can feel overwhelming.
So,
like you just can't grab something out of the sky. So yeah, it's useful. This is super practical.
Yeah.
Not just all like rah-rah feelings. It's practical and useful.
No,
anyway,
it's a
it comes out
toolkit.
June, did she say? Is it
June 17th?
Yeah, June 17th. Fired Up, How to Turn Your Spark into a Flame and Come Alive at Any Age. Well, she's a big deal. I don't care what she says. She's a unicorn to me.
She is.
So she's meant a lot to our generation. And she matters to the future. So anyway, yay on her. Thanks for being here, you guys. We have more in the Midlife series that we just feel so energized by and excited about. And these conversations that we're just having right here, right around our season of life. We're just not alone in any of them. You aren't either. There's a lot of us asking the same questions, dreaming similar dreams, like really reaching for a beautiful, robust second half of life. So glad you're here. More to come in the series. Also, thanks for subscribing to the show. Do it if you haven't already, you guys. Just wherever you listen to your podcasts, just do the follow button or the plus button or the add button, and it will just automatically build the For the Love library for you right there in your app, and you don't ever have to search us up or feel like you missed a post. It'll be right there. Thanks for doing that. And we pay attention to every review you write and every rating. That just means so much to the show. Plus, we're always listening to you. We care about what you care about. We're interested in what you're interested in, and we're always listening to your ideas. So don't forget also over at jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, you can leave us a message. Tell us what dream you'd chase if you had no obstacles. Send voicemail, and we will certainly listen to it, and some of those will make it on the show. So we'd love to have your little voice on our little show. All right, you guys, that's it. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.